for Netflix. I would pay anybody to get rid of ads. I get off my soapbox now. I hate fucking ads. I mean, that was my job for so many years, and that's why I'm in this class now. I was good at it and whatever, but I didn't believe in it.
Well, it depends. You know, depends on what context, right? If you
It doesn't always annoy me, but it depends. The only way it would depend for me is if I have a choice.
mhm
I don't
mhm
like how we don't have a choice in a lot of things. So my only choice,
right.
my only action is to not use your product.
But Apple sometimes takes your choices away too. Because the kind of apps you are allowed to install. That's kind of pretty much dictated by Apple.
Yeah, yeah. But ever since I switched, I mean, I used PC for many, many, many years. Ever since I
I see.
switched, I have way less issues. My shit crashes less. My
Mhm
computer doesn't get slow after being on for 3 days.
mhm.
Like, still, when I see people using Windows machines, they're still crashing. They
Yep.
still have memory leaks. They still, it's just like, come on, like,
Well, that's why I use Linux.
I know. Linux is a whole other world. I mean, I
Linux
haven't.
is a whole different kind of mindset. It's going back to it's free, but you're supposed to be an experienced user.
Yeah.
You should be able to read how people fix the problem and implement your own
I mean, and
fix
Mac
and
has been
stuff like
Linux
that.
based. I mean, it's been useful for that. Like when I do need to fix something, I can find it and I can fix it.
Mhm
You know, at first I didn't want to switch to Mac because I didn't like the idea of not being able to update my hard drive or my memory. This kind of
mhm
shit like threw me off.
mhm.
But I'm like, well, they make a good enough product where I didn't really need to do it for a couple
Yep.
years.
And
This
you
computer's 3 years old
and you
right
were
now.
not alone at Google either, because I think most developers at Google actually use Macs
They do.
as their
They forced me to switch
computers.
to Mac. I went in working there in PC. When I got the job in Google Analytics, they forced me to switch to Mac, and I complained like a motherfucker. I was like, I don't touch a Mac. These like fancy, designy people are, they're like all the engineers use Mac, and I'm like, okay. So I switched to Mac, and it took me a week to fall in love with it. I was like, this is superior, no wonder. Like,
Mhm
and they have less support, right?
mhm.
And then when I worked at other companies later, I would I would not take the job if they didn't allow me to have a Mac. First of all, like
Interesting.
and some companies would, and I tried a couple of times. I'm like, okay, I'll go back to PC, but the companies that wouldn't support Mac are tech stock, and I'm like, dude, the support costs on this are way lower, and then some companies I could convince, like, dude,
Mhm
I can manage my own Mac. Don't worry about it. Just let me get on the network, and
mhm
I never had problems. Like
mhm.
some places they would
Well,
allow it,
I'm the
but
same way with Linux too. I get Linux on all of my machines, and I do my own administration
but
and
I question companies with engineering teams that don't allow Mac or Linux.
ah.
Because I'm like, I don't trust you. Because you code all day long on your PCs and crash, and
I see.
it's all good.
So that's okay. We just came back from a break, and I think this class, for the most part, I'm just gonna. It's mostly just a project. You guys learn something about simple app programming, and hopefully some of you will try to sign up for 363 when it does get offered. I don't know when it's going to be offered.
I will not be here.
You won't be here. That's okay. Um, so what we'll talk about today is Firebase, which is kind of like a new topic, but it's not totally new, because we'll still be using key pair values. Okay, so there's still that concept. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about what Firebase real-time database is first. So we'll go to the official Firebase website and just kind of go through some of their own description to find out what it is. And then we'll get back to App Inventor and talk about how we can make use of Firebase in App Inventor. So this is getting to a point where um, part of the logic can now be in the cloud instead of in your app, because it's the main difference between Firebase and other products from Google is Firebase was designed to work with apps, mobile apps, from the get-go. Okay, so sometimes you have connection, other times you don't have connection. So what do you do when you lose connection? Do you completely lose the use of your app, or can you still use it to a certain extent? And then what happens when you get back and say, oh, okay, Wi-Fi connection again? how do you synchronize your data? Okay, is it going to be a long, lengthy process, and you have to write all the logic to do it, or do you want the product or whatever the product is going to be able to auto resync all the data and resolve the differences and all that stuff? So that is kind of the basis of Firebase. So we'll first go to the official website of Firebase. Now, Firebase is a kind of a misleading name. Okay, so we'll go open a new tab because I want this to be back to where it was. Okay, so this is Firebase real-time database. So they use this word real-time to basically mean that if there's any type of data change, it will push to your mobile device. You don't have to poll, okay? For instance, you're writing a video game on a phone, okay? And you say, okay, I want to keep track of the high score, okay? Who has the high score, at any particular time? So you can store that information into a database. Everybody knows, yeah, I know how to do it in MySQL, okay? I just, or using a website, I just, have to keep querying, right? Whenever it's time to display, the high score, the scoreboard, I just go, query the database, get back the list, and then show, okay, this person has the highest score. But that relies on logic on the client side. In other words, you have to write the logic in your app to query, and then to put it into your own local, space, and then to get it displayed. Firebase is kind of the opposite approach. It's pushing that to you. Whenever the highest score changes, your app, now I'm pretty sure underneath, there's still a client-server relationship where your device is actually querying the database, but it's hidden away from you. So as far as your app is concerned, you are getting a notification and go like, oh, by the way, this item just got changed. What do you want to do about it? Just update it, or do you want to redisplay something, or do you want to pop up a notification? So now you don't have to manage the connection to the database because it's pushing all the changes to you. So that's kind of the main difference between a quote-unquote real-time database, where it's capable of pushing changes back to your clients, as opposed to a regular quote-unquote regular database where you have to do all the logic. You have to query the database and look for changes and so on and so forth. This one pushes the changes to you. The second thing that's kind of interesting about the Firebase real-time database, the name is really confusing. I hate this name because it's the full name is Firebase real-time database. So why are there two bases, right? So the other thing that's kind of interesting about this is because it's built to deal with mobile apps. So it's also built so that you can maintain a local copy of something when you are not internet connected. So you can make some changes to certain items, when the internet is not connected, your app will still continue to work, quote unquote, in offline mode, okay? But when it does get back into the place where you have, internet access, then it will sync with the server, sync with the cloud and update whatever is, in the cloud. Now, I have no idea what happens, I haven't read up on what happens when there's a conflicting change, like somebody else also changed the same item when you were offline. Would it resolve that automatically, or would it just tell you that, well, sorry, somebody changed that item already while you were offline, how do you want to deal with that? So that part I have not looked into yet, and I don't think App Inventor's interface can deal with that either. So you can see how JSON is kind of important, okay? Because everything in JSON is really just the text encoding of structured data. So it's really helpful to be able to do it. Now the other thing, I'm not a Google spokesperson. I have never worked for Google, unlike one of you. I've never worked for Google. I don't have any benefits from advertising their product. But whatever you are choosing, it is kind of important to understand, what is the cross-platform compatibility. So in this case, huh?
What is that last one?
That's Unity.
Oh, you mentioned
Yeah, that's Unity, which is really cool because that means if you write a game in Unity, it can utilize the same kind of database. Yep. That I do not know. I think Unity is free to download and use and develop, but once you publish a game, I think they want a cut. But I don't know how that's how that works out. I believe it is free to play with. Yep. So in this case, we got Android, iOS. This represents JavaScript, but it also typically it means client-side JavaScript. Okay, it doesn't mean server-side, but it means client-side JavaScript. C++, okay, the most used, kind of back-end programming language, and Unity. So it has programming interfaces to all of these to make it easy, for different programs to interact with each other. So, so that's kind of something that you can look into when you're trying to select a platform. So collaboration across devices, build serverless apps. So this is basically a really big push these days, is to be quote unquote serverless. So I know this is going against what we talked about about mainframes, because there's no central there's no server that to talk to. Okay, it is really so it's nice because you don't have to maintain your server in any way. You don't have to own it, you don't have to maintain it, you don't have to update it, you don't have to back it up, you don't have to worry about all the security issues and whatnot. It's quote unquote cloud based. So all you have to do is to specify the logic that is specific to your application and leave the hosting, the security updates and whatnot to Google, or in this case, Firebase. Firebase is a subsidiary of Google, so basically it's Google. But Google is not the only one to offer this kind of service. It is also um, Amazon Web Services. Also has similar products, and I'm pretty sure Apple has similar products as well for their own devices. So this is optimized for offline use. I talked about this a little bit. When your users go offline, the real-time database SDK uses the local cache to serve and store data changes. When the device comes back online, the local data is automatically synchronized. So I'm pretty sure it will detect like conflicting changes. So while you were offline, if somebody else made a change to the same entry, I'm pretty sure it will notify the app itself and go like, okay, we have a conflict. What do you want to do about that, right? Do you want to drop your local change? Do you want to drop the remote one? Or do you want to have your custom logic to synchronize and merge the two changes into one? So I haven't looked into it because the app inventor interface does not actually support that. Strong user base security. We're not going to talk about user base security in this class, but the Firebase real-time database has very, very interesting ways of dealing with security. That's a whole different class. Okay, I can make one class just talking about Firebase real-time database. But the idea is it's a tree-based type of database, and you can insert or attach JavaScripts basically at every single node to specify access requirements. It's a very weird way of looking at things, but it pushes all the logic like authentication, who has access to what, onto the cloud, instead of oh, okay, I'm writing this script that has to be running on a particular server to deal with user access control. Nope, it's not there. It's not your app doing user access control. The code is actually quote unquote distributed all over the place. So as I said, that's a whole different class to talk about that particular aspect of Firebase. Part of the Firebase platform. So if you look at the Firebase platform, okay, which is interesting to know, but at the same time not too relevant to us, okay. One thing that it offers, there's machine learning, cloud functions. Basically they are functions that do not need a host. They are triggered to execute by time, by access to particular nodes in the database, and so on. But they do not. They're not sitting somewhere waiting, for someone to trigger it. It is self-triggered by, other events. So it's kind of a very interesting way of distributing code. This, I think, is very interesting. The Firebase authentication piece allows you to simplify how you want to manage your servers. It is not, the app inventor does not have access to this portion of Firebase. Um, but when you're writing, an application, this piece allows you to not to have to maintain the password and user identity of your users. So instead, you can just say, oh, I can accept users that are already a Google user, Facebook user, Unity user. If I remember correctly, they also have GitHub users. So if you already have registered with one of those services, you can use your identity with those services as a user of whatever app you're writing. So Google is going to be doing all the authentication, and they'll give you a token if everything works okay, and say, okay, this is the UUID of this particular user. So all you have to do now is to maintain your own list of your own users, but you don't have to deal with passwords. You don't have to worry about, oh, what if they hack into my code and discover all the passwords of all the users, because that's completely not in your app anymore. So it's kind of cool, but as I said, it's not passing through to the app inventor user interface. But when you're using the Android SDK, then you have full access to all of these functionalities. All right, so this is just a quick preview of what you can do with Firebase real-time database. So now we're going to get back to the app inventor part of it, of what we can actually do with it. So here's the okay. Let me start up App Inventor first, and then you guys will see that it's a little bit interesting. It's under experimental. Okay, first of all, it's under experimental, which means if you do make use of it, there's a chance that it might get changed in the future, where your code doesn't work anymore. Okay. But even so, I think it's a cool thing to kind of play with. CloudDB is kind of the same concept. It's a cloud-based database, but it's not Firebase. So we're going to be focusing on this one. If you look up the live information of this one, it says additional information in addition to all of these things. So we'll go through this list first. Okay, we'll go through the properties first. And inside the properties, you have a developer bucket, Firebase token, and also persist. These are only in the designer, which means your code has no access to these. They cannot be changed while your code is running. They can only be determined designer, which means they're static as far as your code is concerned. You cannot change it at runtime. Okay. And what the developer bucket and Firebase token are for is if you say that, okay, MIT has their own subscription of Firebase and is giving you access to their, Firebase. So you don't have to pay a dime to make use of it, which is cool, right? But if you say that, oh, but I'm handling things that are sensitive, okay, like credit card numbers or whatever, and you do not, have your stuff exposed to the MIT team, then you can go to Firebase, register, open an account, register, pay for your own, and then go back and update the developer bucket and also the Firebase token for your particular subscription, so that now it is using your private Firebase implementation instead of the MIT one, which is free to you. Okay? Is that okay? All right. And persist is to say whether the values are retained when offline. So this is going back to what we talked about a little bit earlier, of what happens when your app is offline and you want to get something or you want to update something. So let's read about this a little bit. So the next time values will be uploaded to Firebase the next time the app is run while connected to the internet. This is useful for applications that will gather data while not connected to the network. Append value and remove first will not work correctly while offline, and they require a network connection. If you set persist on any Firebase component on any screen, it makes all Firebase component on all screens persistent. This is a limitation of the low-level Firebase library. Also be aware that you want to set persist to true. You should do, if you want it to be true, you should do so before connecting the companion for incremental development. Okay, so this is just getting back to what we talked about a little bit earlier, that Firebase as a quote-unquote real-time database, has the ability of keeping a cache of localized changes, when you do not have internet access. So when you do have internet access, it can resynchronize automatically to the server or to the cloud. Okay, let's take a quick look at the events as well, because that will give you an idea of what will trigger something to execute. The first one is interesting. Data changed. Okay, if you're writing a game, okay, and you have one tag to represent the high score, okay, who has the high score, what is the high score, what is a picture, small picture of that person. That will, if the high score got changed, it will send an event to the app. Then you can choose how you want to handle that event. You can just kind of tuck it away and just go like, well, somebody's already playing the game, I don't want to do anything right now. Okay? Or you can put up a notification little icon thing and go like, oh, okay, new high score of blah, 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 to give all the gamers a little bit more pressure, right? Like, okay, you step up the game. The second one is a Firebase error. It just reports back what is the what kind of error has occurred. First removed. Event triggered by remove first function. The argument value is the object that was the first in the list, which is now removed. Okay, so we'll get to remove first later on to basically to talk about what it is. Got value. So got value, which is this one here, indicates that the get value request has succeeded. So this is also getting back to what we have already talked about regarding asynchronous programming. Okay, one particular block starts an operation, but that blocks come back right away after placing the request. But when is that request going to be served, and when do we get the response of that request? Who knows, right? When we do, this is going to happen. Okay, so it's interesting in a way that when you write your code, you have to think about it in this way. It's like, I'm placing a request here, but I'm going to handle the reply somewhere else. Okay, if you program in JavaScript, this technique is called a promise. Okay, a promise is how JavaScript handles asynchronous communication issues like that. Yeah.
That I don't know why I just thought of it, but for asynchronous programming, let's say you get the call, and then your code continues,
Mm-hmm.
and it finally gets it while it's still going through the code. Will they run simultaneously?
You do not know how they're going to interleave.
Okay.
That is the bottom line. I'm suspecting in App Inventor, it can only do one body of block at one time. So if you have let's say you have the get value thing, attached to a button click event handler. That event handler probably will run to completion, even though the got value is back already before that. So I'm suspecting it is a single thread underneath, but there's no guarantee whether that really is the case or not. So you basically have to write your code, assuming that it can interleave in any particular order. So the last one is tag list. Event is triggered when we receive the list of known tags, and it's triggered by, or is started by the get tag list block. Once again, it is asynchronous communication. You call this block first, get tag list, it returns right away. When it returns, all it is really saying is, I placed a request, the request was sent out, without any problem. That's it, okay? When are you going to get the list of all the tags back? Who knows, okay? But when you do, this event is going to be raised, and then you can specify something to handle it. Is that okay? All right. So now we go to the methods and just kind of go down the list to figure out what you can actually do with Firebase, the real-time database of Firebase. The first one is to append a value to the end of a list atomically. Um, so you're basically each tag is associated with a list. And what this is going to do is to append your item, okay, with value to add to the end of that list. Now, what is that word atomically? It has nothing to do with bombs or anything nuclear, okay, or radioactive. All it is saying is it guarantees that each update is going to run to completion before the next one occurs. So that's why it explains if two devices use this function simultaneously, both will be appended, and no data is going to be lost. Now, the question is which one is going to be the first, which one is going to be second. So that can be arbitrary, okay? The second one is something that we saw earlier, get tag list. Basically, it would get all the tags for this particular application. So if you use like one to maintain the high score, one to maintain lowest scores, or communications, messages and whatnot, one to maintain, who is online, who other users are currently online. So those would each one will come back with the name of the tag itself. Okay. The next one we saw also earlier is get value. You just give it a tag, and then you also specify value if tag not there. We have seen this already because TinyDB has exactly the same kind of interface. You say, okay, what is the name of the tag that I'm looking for? And then you also specify, well, in case it is not actually in the Firebase database, what value should it return to indicate that, nope, it's not in the database, it's not there. So once again, you have to be very careful what to specify here because it has to be something that is unique so that it cannot be a value that can actually be stored in a tag. Okay? And it would typically return a list because each tag is associated with a list. And then we have remove first. Return the first element of a list and atomically remove it. If two devices use this function simultaneously, one will get the first element and the other one will get the second element, or an error if there's nothing available. When the element is available, the first removed event will be triggered. So what this means is you specify what tag, because under the tag is a list, right? So when this call returns, it basically signifies that, yep, we got either there's nothing there, okay, and then an error event will occur, or it actually got something. But it guarantees that if two devices, okay, the program running on two devices, if both devices get to this call at exactly the same moment, it won't cause a problem, okay? One of them will get the actual first item, and then the second one would either get the second item or get an error back when there are no more items left. Okay? So what do you think this is going to be used for?
Well, if you have a game and you want to store the results so that the next time they log on.
Then why would you want to remove it?
More like, let's say
Both
you're
going for the
fighting.
same thing.
I'd say it's closer to like, let's say,
Capture the flag.
yeah. So one guy captures the flag, the next guy can't capture it because it's already gone.
Or there's a treasure chest, right? There are items in the treasure chest. Okay, so you can randomize the ordering of the items in a treasure chest in a D&D. And then the players, when they get there, each person can take a turn and go like, okay, we'll get some items. And this guarantees that no two people will get the same item, okay, from the treasure chest. And when it's empty, it will raise the error event to say that, whoops, it's empty now. There's nothing there.
So what happens when they have several people playing the same game at the same time?
They get to the same tag. But when you call remove first, then whoever gets there first will get the first item because it's a list.
Right.
Yeah. So it will basically remove the first item from the list.
Okay.
and then the second person will get the second item from the list. But each time you get an item, it will be removed from the list.
Oh.
So eventually, if you keep getting stuff and you're not putting anything back in by using append value,
Right.
so these two they operate as a pair, right? Because one is removing, the other one is adding items to the end. So it basically forms what we call a FIFO, a first in, first out, or a queue, as opposed to a stack where it is last in, first out. This is first in, first out. And you don't have to do anything about the data structure. It is automatically implemented for you. Clear tag just removed the entire tag from the Firebase, so the list associated with the tag will be gone, like totally erased. Store value, ask Firebase to store the given value under the given tag. So this one can store any value, and it is not going to be a list, unless value to store is a list itself. Okay, so if you want to store something that is not a list, you can use store value, and then get value will be the opposite of these two. And then if you want to maintain a list, then you want to use append value and remove first as a pair. Now you can mix those in any way you want. I mean, even if you use append value, you can still use get value. Now, but when you use get value, first of all, you get back a list. The second thing is it does not remove anything. Is that okay? So get value in a way is a peek into the Firebase and go like, well, I'm just taking a peek and see what is there, but it doesn't automatically remove anything. On the other hand, remove first is going to actually remove the first item from a list. So do we have any questions about the quote-unquote API? This is kind of this is analogous to an API in typical programming with any type of SDK.
What you could do with, let's say, that treasure chest again.
Mm-hmm.
You could use get value to get all the values that are in that treasure chest to show people, hey, here are your choices.
Mm-hmm.
Since you were here first, you get to go first and pick one. And then that's when you use the remove first.
Right. Now, so remove first, can potentially trigger one of the things that we saw earlier. It's going to trigger, where is it? Data changed. Or at least potentially it would trigger that. Because it indicates the data in Firebase has changed, launch an event with the tag and value that have been changed. So appending will trigger this, and then remove first will trigger this as well, because both is causing some kind of changes to that particular tag. Which can be helpful, because when okay, let's say you have a really slow player, right, who keeps staring at the items in the chest and it's like, I can't make up my mind, Then you can use this to basically refresh the treasure chest as other people start to pick items out of the chest. It's like, oh, this is gone, poof, this is gone, poof, this is gone, poof. So it can be useful for that. But you cannot say, I only want to listen to changes to one particular tag. So when you turn on, or when you put data changed as an event handler into the app, it's capturing every changes, right? But you can filter using a conditional statement and say, I don't really care about changes to these things, okay? I only want to pay attention to changes to these tags, like treasure chest content, or my own health bar, or whatever, right? Because your own health bar can be affected by things that you did not do, because somebody can walk into the room and hit you in the head, okay? D&D, you can be stung by killer bees, right? It can be something that's time-based. Now, time-based stuff, we cannot quite easily do using Firebase, using App Inventor. But Firebase can do that. Firebase can attach functions written in JavaScript to timer events. So you can basically say, every 10 seconds, I want to run this particular script. And that script have access to your real-time database. So it can go through your real-time database, Look for things like, okay, do we have active poisonous items? Yes, we do. Who is affected by these? This is a list of players who have been affected by, who's affected by this particular poison. So every 10 seconds, you can decrease the health point by X amount based on whatever logic you want to incorporate into your D&D game. So that will in return trigger, data changed. So the health bar of a player can now, like over time it can decrease because of the poison effect. So this is the real power of Firebase is not all the logic needs to be specified in the app. It can be distributed into the real-time database itself. It's quote unquote floating in the cloud somewhere. So people can hack into your app, but they wouldn't be able to control that logic.
They still could hack into it, huh?
They could still hack into it if they have the credential of you.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So
But if they don't have that credential, they wouldn't be able to hack into.
you say credential, what do you mean?
Credential meaning your identity and your password.
Oh, they would
Yep.
have to know both.
Yep.
Oh, that's good
Yep.
to know. So it's
Yep.
not as easy.
And these days, a lot of you can turn on two-factor authentication on most apps now. I just changed my phone, and I had to do a lot of that stuff because what happens is, they know that I'm not using my old device. Okay, I'm still using my home Wi-Fi, so as far as the IP address is concerned, it's the same. They wouldn't be able to tell that I am now using a different IP address. Okay, but they could tell that I'm not using the same device because all apps have access to the unique ID of that particular device. So they would go like, hey, you have never signed in using this particular device. We'll let you continue to use this app if you can specify what we have just texted you. Okay? So they would text me, with a 6-digit number, which is only valid for like 30 minutes. Okay? So within 30 minutes, I can go back to whatever app or website, okay, punch in those 6 digits, then they know at least I'm the same person who has access to text. Okay, now somebody could have stolen my whole device, okay, get my passcode, to unlock the screen and be able to answer, yep, I got the text. But if I lost my device, I could just go to Android, go to Google, and just say deactivate this device. I think they can now remotely encrypt or lock or erase the device as well. If you declare your Android device to be lost, you can remotely disable it and erase the data too.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
You usually have to set that up ahead of time,
I
right?
don't know. Let me check because I can just play with that now. Okay, so I'm gonna go to incognito window because otherwise it would have the sign in cookies of my current session, which is not going to be very helpful. Okay, so Android, where is my device? Okay, all right, that's Horizon. Okay, let's go to the Google and find my device from Google. So you have to sign in first and sign in. Okay, so you can find my device. This is where I am right now. See, it knows where I am. Okay, very good. It knows which Wi-Fi I'm connected to. I'm connected to the school Wi-Fi, which is LRCCD. It can play sound, secure device, lock it, and sign me out of it. It can also erase my device remotely. Yep. Yep, so there we go. Yep, you can. So as long as my device still has internet access, I could do that.
Wow, that is cool.
Now, what would be even cooler is, if my device is offline and it does not get authentication from me, and somebody has tried to sign in like X many times, and it automatically just erase all the data. I think Apple's can do it. iOS can do that.
Yeah, I can.
Yep. I don't have anything that important.
Wow.
Yep. So kind of cool.
Or scary.
Hmm?
Or scary.
Well, I mean, erasing a device, these days, doesn't do much because most of my data is in the cloud anyway. I mean, I lose some localized, configuration, which is annoying that I have to redo every time, that I change devices. But I won't be losing anything that's really, really crucial because all my actual data is already in the cloud. Yeah, what would be totally bad is somebody get my identity and be able to access my cloud stuff. Now, that would be bad. But getting to my device is, I lose, like the cost of the device itself.
It's funny, it's almost like the stuff that I remember seeing in movies 10 years ago is a reality today.
It's probably more than that now.
The scary movies are current events.
Yeah, and this is pretty good accuracy too, if you think about it,
Oh gosh.
because it's between two rows of parking spaces, so yeah, that's pretty good resolution.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep. I just got this phone last week, so I've been configuring it and reinstalling stuff, because my other phone I just dropped it one too many times. And what happened with my other phone was it had a case, but the case itself, the lip around the screen is really thin for one thing, and it's also very flexible. So when it does hit something, at the edge of the screen, the the cover material would actually give away. I mean, easily. I could actually just hand press it a little bit, and it comes loose. So now I have a much more, you know, kind of solid type of lip here. It's not gonna, dislodge itself or anything like that. But as a result, my phone won't fit into my fanny pack anymore because it's now a lot bigger than it really is. Overkill, as they say, overkill. Yeah, but it comes with it, not. I bought this for $10. Comes with the little belt clip thing,
Yeah.
and also, this is also a two-piece thing. It has its own screen protector, and then another thing to wrap around the screen protector
For $10.
for $10.
Where'd you find that at?
Amazon. What else?
Oh, I thought you were gonna tell me at Walmart or the.
No, no, no. This is the other thing. The belt clip itself also doubles as a stand.
Oh, how cool.
So if I want to watch Netflix or anything like that, I can just kind of pop it out like that. So it's kind of cool.
Almost like a computer.
Does-
I'm really into belt clips though.
Hmm? Well, it's functional. It's very.
What's in the round thing?
Oh, that's my headphone.
You have a belt clip for your headphones. You really need belt clips.
Might as well, right?
Fanny packs are coming back. Maybe you should just go for it.
I have fanny packs.
There you go. So that
I
I
have.
thought they left.
oh yeah, they left. Just like everything else, they left and they're back.
And then they come back. Yes, like boomerang. Yes.
Wow.
Yep. Yeah, but I like cases like this. It's it comes in all colors too. Like bright red and bright blue. I chose black, because it's kind of more
It
universal.
goes with everything.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. All right. So, do we have any questions about the use of Firebase? Now, the interesting about Firebase, because this might have reminded you a little bit of Tiny Web TinyDB, right? Because it has some of the same elements. What is different about between this and TinyWebDB is with TinyWebDB, if you create an item, all other people can see it. So all other App Inventor developers can see it. With this one, it is unique to you. So even if you do not register for for your own Firebase account, other people cannot really see your app, what you store with your app. And what makes this possible is this item here. Let me show you. There we go. So if you click on a Firebase DB component, what makes that possible is this. Yeah, so that token is unique to your app. And other people using App Inventor, unless they know your Firebase token, they wouldn't be able to access what you store into your app's own Firebase token or associated with that token. If you write two different apps, I think that token is changed too. So every app has its own Firebase token to make it unique. So that's kind of cool, but you don't have security. So don't think for a moment that, oh, then I can store sensitive data. You still cannot do that because people, all the MIT people will still have access to it because it is officially still owned by MIT. It's just that you don't have cross application deal contamination. So are we good so far with Firebase? Firebase database, real-time database. Cool.
Are you able to, with the Firebase,
Uh-huh.
download the data and use it for other applications? Like share, I guess, the data with other.
If you
programs?
specify the same token,
Okay. Oh, okay.
or you can register for your own Firebase. So when you go to Firebase, you can basically say, I want to have my own Firebase, right? So you can do that. Let's see, right here. So I can go to console because I'm already signed in, but I don't think this user has any ability to do it. Oh, maybe so. I don't think so. We'll try. Oh, actually, I do already have. So if you sign up for a project like that, with your own account, add a project. Nope, I don't want to add a project. I have a Design Hub project already.
Oh, so that, okay.
Yep. It's basically just saying that I'm sharing all the analytic data with Google. So, and the thing is, you don't have to pay anything until you actually, mass produce or mass distribute your app,
Right.
and your traffic exceeds a certain amount. So if you're testing it, you still have to give. I think you have to give them your credit card account, just in case your traffic is. Yeah, this is using my non-school account. My school account wouldn't be able to do this because it's not linked to Firebase. But you have to give them your credit card number, just in case you use it a lot. But if you're not using it a lot and you're just playing with it, it's not going to incur much money. I mean, it might be pennies, but it's not going to be anything significant.
So that way you could work like on a group project with 2 developers or 3 developers.
This is our design hub that I keep hearing about.
Um,
I thought it was an actual place on campus.
it is an actual place on campus. It's Tech Ed 311. Yep. But Design Hub is more than just a place. It's kind of like.
It's poorly named, in my opinion. I ignored it for like the first 2 months because I thought it was for designers.
This is just how my brain works. What you said, what we were just talking about, reminds me of a movie that I watched with my son. It was Thor Ragnarok, right?
Kids are watching all the Marvel movies to get ready for Endgame. Are you doing that?
Yeah, basically. Yeah, we're.
Cisco's showing in San Jose, so
Oh, they are?
yep.
Interesting. But specifically, when I remember I said, it's not a place, it's the people. And it's also not a very good name. Asgard was not a good name. Remember in Ragnarok, somebody made fun. Oh, right. The guy who ran that trash place was making fun of the name Asgard. It's like ask something.
That movie's like comedy in some scenarios.
It's very entertaining. So we watched that right after we watched Infinity War, because my son wanted.
Yeah.
It is the tone is entirely different, right? I mean, Thor lost a lot of stuff in Ragnarok, but it was still very
They
funny.
made Hulk funny.
Yes,
Like they made him into a comic character. They kind of.
I liked how he saw his father, when he was getting beat up by his sister, and then his father said, and he kept complaining, "My hammer is broken. I have no power now. I'm powerless." Are you the god of hammers?
Yeah, 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 yeah. I love that line. Are you the god of hammers?
That was
That was a great line.
that was a great line. Yep, it was really funny.
Okay.
Even Hala was funny too, even though she was like a super vicious villain, but she was kind of funny,
She had a quick one-liners.
huh?
She had a quick one-liners.
Yep, she has quite a few, and then the acting was good too. I think
I wanted to go watch the movie this week. I have tickets, we're available, but I choose between watching it by myself or watching it with friends. So I'm gonna wait a couple weeks. Plan to watch it.
Yeah, I think my son is willing to wait a little bit, until, like,
I
it's
mean, I
not.
watch every movie on Tuesday because it's so much cheaper. But this movie's 3 hours long,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't know if I can pull that off. Because my friends can't watch it during the day. Otherwise, I would. Did they have 8:30 showtime, 8:30 in the morning for this movie? Which I love that. I would totally go at 8 in the morning. Just like not ruin my entire day around it, not be super crowded. Because I wake up at like 6 anyway, right? Like,
I can see that. I
yeah,
I
it's
agree.
like that. I love that fact. I hate how movies don't start till 11 or something, and it's like an awkward time, like middle of lunch. Like I mean, you just
Because they don't want to, run the whole thing, with all the heating and cooling just for you.
Ah,
I wonder if they had less showtimes in the middle of the day and more early in the morning, would they get more people? People have jobs, people have whatever. You go in the
Mm-hmm.
middle of the day, it's empty. I've done that so many times. It's kind of nice.
Mm-hmm.
But like I feel like if they had early morning showings, don't have the 11 to 2 showings, I
Mm-hmm.
bet you more people would go.
no, I go to those. Because I go to them when I'm getting my car serviced.
Yeah,
So I need to wait
but you're alone,
3 hours.
right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great idea. Because I have to send my car to repair, in Elk Grove, and they only include like a lift ride to within 15 miles. Yeah, so I just need to find a local theater.
The only
Yeah.
problem is with like
Right.
movies being overly, some of them getting like longer and longer for no reason, and then adding now 20 minutes of trailers beforehand. Like, too
Yeah.
much. It was nice when you go 90 minutes in and out, right?
Right.
But sometimes that's all you want.
Yeah.
I'm happy this is 3 hours, this one, but like, hopefully it's not 3 hours of action. Like, I'm sick of that. My friend
Okay.
made a good point the other day. He's like, I can't walk. We all fall asleep in action scenes now. It's like it's not action. It's just like it's bad. It's computer. It's just like watching computer graphics. It's not really losing a lot of art in some of it now, and it's just action for sake of action. And
Yep.
It's boring.
Yeah. Well, with exceptions for a few movies, but
Yeah, there are exceptions, but
Yep.
in general, it's like the ending scenes now are like 30 minutes long of just blowing up, almost dying, oh, blowing up again, oh, I'm almost dead again, oh, I make a comeback with one punch and for 30 minutes, and it puts me to sleep.
sometimes for certain movies, that's the whole point of watching that movie.
Yeah, like Transformers.
Oh yeah.
I give it that. But also Transformers could be, 100 minutes long instead of 2 hours and 30 minutes long.
Mm.
And have the same act. The story wouldn't change. Like, it doesn't need to be over 2 hours long.
I'm more thinking about John Wick.
John Wick is awesome, and they're 90 minutes. They're 100 minutes. They're
Yep.
not long movies.
Well, that's because Keanu Reeves is a kind of older person now. I mean,
But John Wick is seriously one of the most amazing movies out recently because it is true to its form. It's
Yeah.
not. And my friend and I, we're going to watch John Wick after Endgame because we've never seen the one John Wick's in the theater. And we're like,
mm-hmm.
dude, we need to give this movie money. Like, they're so good. And they're 90 minutes long.
Okay, I gotta show these two.
He's riding a horse in this one. John Wick is cool because of all the training he went through.
See, they're both Keanu Reeves. This is from like way back when, and this is from much more recently. See the difference?
Are you trying to say he ages better than us?
No. See what age is gonna do to a person?
What's that?
I don't know.
Johnny Mnemonic? You guys have not?
I
don't.
remember when it came out, but I didn't watch it.
It's a cool movie.
Really? I heard it was crap.
Yeah.
Even back then.
No, it's really cool. It's yeah, but you can see how his acting has not changed.
Oh. Well, he doesn't need to act in John Wick.
He just has to be
He's
himself.
never been a great actor. He has been great at choosing roles.
Yes. Yes.
He's gotten amazing roles that at this point I don't know if anybody else could have done, but not because he's such a good actor. Like they
Because
just became him.
no, they chose roles that are him to begin with.
Yeah, his agent was amazing.
One
Yeah.
style of acting.
Yeah.
As long as he plays to that style, he's good.
Like,
Yep.
what was before John Wick? He was gone for a while. He hadn't done anything in a while. And then
I
John Wick
mean-
was like this
He went to
independent
the,
movie.
was that 47 Ronin?
Hmm?
He did that
Oh
47
wow, that was
Ronin
way
movie.
back when too. Yeah, that was pretty bad. Yeah. But in general, he picks really good movies to be in.
Well, they cast him well. You know, people who
They're
cast him.
redoing Bill and Ted.
Which one?
Bill and Ted. Excellent Adventure.
Oh,
They're not remaking it. It's actually coming up part 3.
I
They're
see.
older. I think he's in it. I think.
He is. That might be interesting. All right.
Because they're not remaking it. It's like it's a sequel, which will be interesting, right? Like, oh, they went to high school. They've already traveled in time. Like, they have to do something again to do. I forget what it's about. But the other guy, his partner, looks so bad. Like, he should not age well.
Okay, so. All right, so getting back here to. So getting back to using cloud data. So you can basically see how quickly this stuff is evolving because, basically App Inventor could not integrate this type of documentation fast enough into their web-based documentation. So it had to be kind of like, they had to spin it off on the side a little bit to explain this because whoever was doing this, probably did not have enough time to integrate it fully into the help system of App Inventor. So basically, this is also something that you might want to read if you choose to use Firebase DB in your project. Because it gives you additional information, additional explanation of what it is and why it is useful, and also a little bit more background information. So I think this is really quite useful because it shows you sample code, okay, which blocks you should be using for what, and gives you a lot more explanation than what we saw earlier from here. So we are comparing this versus this. Okay, this is a lot. There's a lot more explanation here. So it's good. Okay, so if you want to use Firebase, in your project, you read this part as well, because it will give you more information that you need in order to use it. Are there any questions about this? So you can use this in a way to do like even text communication across players of a game. You will probably have to put in a lot of logic because within your app there'll be one single item. You can also use different tags for different rooms, for chatting. Okay, but then you have to come up with a unique tag name for each room that you want to create. Okay, which is not too difficult. It's just a little number as a suffix to whatever tag name you want to use, like room and then some kind of number. But then you have to rely on your own logic to kind of keep track of who is in which room. Okay. But it's kind of cool because because of the notification that an item has changed. So that means when somebody in that room posted something, everybody will get a notification. It's quick and easy to say that, oh, okay, somebody just posted a new message, blah blah blah, like here. So this is good. And there's one more link. There's one more link that I found that was also useful, but it's a little bit more dated, but it's still kind of useful. It's this one here. That's why I call it slightly dated material. And it's dated because it's written in 2016.
That's dated?
That's dated.
Stop.
Anything that's more than a year old is dated.
Oh.
Yeah. But this one is really long too. I mean, if you read this one, it's really long because it doesn't just talk about Firebase. It actually walks you through a particular app to as an example of using Firebase in that particular app. So if you want to use Firebase, in your app, this is also an excellent guide. Even though it is quote unquote dated, much of it is still up to date. It is still being usable at this point. All right. So with 10 minutes left, I'm just going to kind of ask you guys, do you have any questions, regarding your own app? I mean, any particular topic you want me to expand, any bug that you cannot, quite figure out, any limitations, of App Inventor that you have run up against?
I'm probably gonna start bringing some next week though.
Okay, you can bring it on Wednesday or next week. Okay, we have about 2 weeks of classes left, right?
3, I think. No?
Three, three. Okay.
No, 3.
No. I hope there's two.
I was planning on 3.
Okay, so let's look up the final exam time here. Final exam schedule. Because we have classes until the first day of final. And for this class, I'm not planning on giving you a traditional final exam. Maybe we'll have just the final exam being a mini project. I'll ask you guys, write a mini project, in the final exam time that has, that incorporates, these features. So let me just double check. Spring 2019. Okay, so full term class instruction ends on the 15th.
That's 2 weeks.
That's 3 weeks, almost 3. Because today is the 22nd. Yeah, so we got 3 weeks. Yes, okay. Most people won't say that, but I got material to go over in my other classes. So having 1 more week than I thought I had is actually a good thing. Okay, cool. Yep, so if you do have any questions about your app, don't hesitate to bring it to class. Especially if you have a problem that you cannot fix, we can use the lab time. That's what the lab time is for you guys to bring in your projects so I can take a look and help you, fix issues. Any questions? Nope. So you're still writing the DND, okay? And what did you change it to?
Importing recipes.
Oh, right.
And then it's simple but hard. Some parts of it are hard, but the simple part of it is importing recipes for multiple websites, and then creating shopping lists based off of them.
Mm-hmm.
Also being able to modify them, because I find that I get recipes from online and I change them constantly.
Mm-hmm.
I add a different spice, or I like doing that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't have a good way of tracking it. It's always a pain in the ass. I have
Mm-hmm.
to go write it down in the middle of cooking or something like that. But making that easy, if I can get voice in there, it'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
The other piece of it is to be able to change all the values. This is simple but useful. But change all the values of all the
Scaling.
ingredients based on how many people are coming.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have to every line go, okay, I have 3 cups normally, but it's for 4 people. It's 2 people. It's just done, and then it stores it all. And then I figured that they can all maybe something like for this.
Mm-hmm.
All of them store. So at some point, people can just look for recipes. They've already been pulled.
Mm-hmm.
And then they can make their tweaks and then kind of store it in there. This is my version of chili con carne.
They can branch.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That sounds pretty fun. That sounds like really useful too.
Yeah, and I think I would actually use it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I wanted to change to it. Importing and all this. It's not. There's tricky things, but it's all. We'll bring in issues.
Okay.
But
All
if
right.
I can get it to work, even
Mm-hmm.
in the beginning at a very simple level,
Mm-hmm.
I still think it'd be actually just useful. Even if I'm the only one using it, I would be happy to
Okay.
have something like a good way of keeping track of all this stuff.
Okay.
I'm
And
curious, for example, just came out with, and it's been years I've been simple thing they should have had years ago, and they
Mm-hmm.
just come out with it, and it still doesn't even work very well. It's not that hard. Make it a checkbox.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So are you working on the mindfulness? Okay. How's that coming along?
It's it's more complex than I thought. I thought I was gonna choose something easy.
Okay. Well, you can always change the scope of the project.
Yeah, I think that's a good
Yeah.
idea.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah.
And you're working on.
The app, what I'm doing, I told you before, like I'm doing some other things.
Mm-hmm.
I can bring it next week,
Okay. All right.
the lab.
Okay. Sounds like a plan. Okay. If nobody's gonna complain, we can end the class like a little bit early today.
Okay. And I'll
Yep.
see you at the lab.
Yep. I'll be at the lab. So if you guys want to utilize that lab time, go to the lab.